On October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta, Indonesia, for what should have been a routine one-hour flight. But this flight would shock the world and forever change the reputation of one of aviation's most iconic aircraft, the Boeing 737. Strap in, because this is a story of technology, human error, and a deadly oversight that would cost 189 lives. The flight and crew. It was early morning at Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, Indonesia's busiest airport. Dozens of flights were taking off in rapid succession, and among them was Lion Air Flight 610, bound for Pangkalpinang. The airline, known for its low-cost flights, was at the forefront of modern aviation technology in Indonesia. Just 2 months earlier, Lion Air had acquired a brand-new Boeing 737 MAX 8, part of Boeing's latest generation of its best-selling 737 series. The passengers had no reason to worry. They were flying on what many considered one of the safest aircraft in history. The Boeing 737 had been a reliable workhorse for decades, serving airlines worldwide with an impressive safety record. Lion Air itself was a long-time Boeing operator, and their fleet was largely homogenized with older 737s. This made the MAX variant a natural addition. The flight crew appeared experienced on paper. Captain Bavi Suneja, 31, was from India and trained in the United States. He had accumulated over 6,000 flight hours, most of them in Boeing 737s. First Officer Harvino, 41, had around 5,000 hours, again mostly on older 737s. While competent, the first officer's training record showed difficulties in critical areas like approach procedures, departure instructions, and stall recovery. Still, he was fully certified and assigned to be the pilot monitoring for this flight. Weather conditions were clear, and the crew expected a smooth departure. At 6:20 a.m., Flight 610 was cleared for takeoff from runway 25 left. The MAX 8 began its roll, but as the plane lifted off, the pilots were about to face a nightmare. Technical malfunctions and early warning signs. Unbeknownst to the crew, there was a discrepancy between the aircraft's two angle of attack, always sensors. These sensors measured the aircraft's rotation angle relative to the airflow, critical information for determining lift and preventing a stall. On this flight, the captain's sensor was miscalibrated, reading a high angle of attack before the plane even left the ground. The result? Conflicting data on the primary flight displays, including airspeed and altitude readings that didn't match. As the nose lifted off the runway, the master caution warning illuminated. The captain's control wheel began to shake violently, the dreaded stick shaker, warning of an imminent stall. The takeoff configuration warning light also flickered. The crew was immediately confused. Airspeed readings were inconsistent, and the stall warning remained active. The first officer suggested turning back, but the captain did not respond. The aircraft continued to climb, but the inconsistencies worsened. The captain's altimeter read 340 feet while the first officer's showed 570 feet. The pilots attempted to troubleshoot, referencing the manual for unreliable airspeed procedures, but the chaos was only escalating. The fight against the plane. Lion Air 610 was now heading northeast, climbing to 5,000 feet with flaps retracted as standard, but the plane began pitching down without command. Investigators later found that the automatic stabilizer trim was repeatedly moving the nose downward, essentially the aircraft fighting its own pilots. The flight data recorder revealed a deadly tug-of-war. The automatic system applied nose-down trim, while the pilots applied nose-up trim in vain. The first officer attempted to maintain control, but the plane's movements became increasingly erratic. For over 4 minutes, the crew struggled against a system they didn't fully understand. Meanwhile, the passengers and flight attendants likely noticed a strange up and down motion. The aircraft could not maintain a stable altitude. Air traffic controllers watched in horror as the plane, still under manual control at times, failed to follow headings and continued to climb and dive erratically. At 6:31 a.m., the struggle ended. Lion Air Flight 610 plunged into the Java Sea at high speed, nose down, killing all 189 on board. The world was stunned. How could a brand new plane, one of Boeing's most advanced, crash so catastrophically? Investigation and findings. Responsibility for the investigation fell to Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee, KNKT. Data from the flight data recorder, combined with maintenance logs, quickly pointed to the captain's AOA sensor. The sensor had a history of malfunction and was replaced just one day before the crash, but crucially, it was not calibrated properly. Even more troubling, an earlier flight, Lion Air 043, experienced similar anomalies, inconsistent instrument readings and runaway stabilizer trim. The crew of that flight successfully stopped the automatic trim using the non-normal checklist, which required flipping the stabilizer trim cutout switches. But this critical information wasn't logged or communicated effectively. When Flight 610 took off, the pilots had no knowledge of this workaround. Investigators also identified that MCAS system, Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. This software was designed to prevent the MCAS nose from pitching up too sharply, a side effect of mounting larger engines on a 1960s-era fuselage. The MCAS low ground clearance meant engineers had to mount the new engine slightly forward and higher than previous models. This altered the aircraft's aerodynamics, creating a tendency for the nose to rise in high angle of attack situations. MCAS automatically pushed the nose down to correct this. But there was a fatal flaw. MCAS relied on a single AOA sensor. If that sensor malfunctioned, the system could repeatedly push the nose down, even when it was unnecessary. And that's exactly what happened. The history of the 737. To understand why the MCAS had this vulnerability, we need to look back at the 737 family. The original Boeing 737, introduced in 1967, was designed to replace the 727. It featured a low fuselage for easy access at smaller airports and engines mounted under the wings. Over the decades, Boeing updated the aircraft multiple times. Classic Series 300 to 500 models introduced advanced avionics and improved engines, CFM56. Next generation NG 600 to 900 models, further avionics upgrades, fuel-efficient engines, larger fuselage options. 737 MAX, 4th generation. Launched in 2017 to compete with Airbus A320neo, featuring larger engines, CFM LEAP 1B, MCAS, and subtle aerodynamic tweaks. The problem was that the 737 design, rooted in the 1960s, had limitations. Its low ground clearance made engine upgrades tricky. Boeing's solution, MCAS, was software-based rather than mechanical. While it worked under controlled circumstances, the system had vulnerabilities that were not fully communicated to pilots. Corporate pressure and the rush to market. Boeing was under immense pressure. Airbus had introduced the A320neo, a fuel-efficient, pilot-friendly aircraft that required minimal retraining. Airlines were ordering the A320neo in large numbers, threatening Boeing's market share. Developing a completely new aircraft would have taken years and billions of dollars. Instead, Boeing decided to modify the existing 737 platform. This allowed airlines to upgrade with minimal pilot retraining, keeping costs low and orders high. However, this approach introduced compromises. MCAS was a workaround, not a solution, and the reliance on a single sensor created a critical point of failure. Corporate culture also played a role. After acquiring McDonnell Douglas in 1997, Boeing shifted from an engineering-driven company to a more executive-focused, profit-driven organization. The aftermath. The Lion Air 610 disaster shook the aviation world. The Boeing 737 MAX, previously trusted and popular, became synonymous with danger. Public confidence dropped, airlines grounded fleets, and regulators worldwide demanded explanations. The tragedy highlighted several critical issues. over-reliance on automated systems like MCAS without proper pilot training, inadequate communication between crews about known issues, flaws in maintenance practices such as sensor calibration, corporate decisions prioritizing market competition over safety. It also forced a global re-evaluation of aviation safety protocols, regulatory oversight, and pilot training standards. Today, the 737 MAX has returned to service with redesigned MCAS, dual sensor validation, and enhanced pilot training programs. Airlines and regulators now monitor sensor integrity rigorously, and pilots are trained to recognize and counteract runaway stabilizer scenarios. Yet the shadow of Lion Air Flight 610 and later Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 remains. These crashes remind us that even the most advanced technology is only as safe as the humans who design, maintain, and operate it. Every sensor, every procedure, every decision can mean the difference between life and death. If this video gave you insight into the hidden dangers and engineering choices behind the Boeing 737 MAX, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and leave a comment. Share your thoughts. What could have prevented these disasters? Let us know below.